What is going on, beautiful people? I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today we're going to be talking about the cost of living in Denver, Colorado. Now this is probably going to talk a little bit about the majority of things. It's not going to cover everything because I don't know what you guys do on a day-to-day basis, but we're going to talk about the majority of things that you're going to run into. And hey, if this is your first time on the channel and you're looking to learn a little bit more about Denver or just Colorado in general, then make sure and hit the subscribe button down below, tap the bell icon for notifications. That way you can be notified anytime I come out with a new video and you can be the first to learn about the Denver market. If you don't already know, my name is Michael and I get people reaching out all the time looking to make a move. They may have some questions or they're just looking to get a little bit of assistance to get on out here. So whether that's 5 weeks, a year, 2 years, whatever it may be, my contact information is below. More than happy to take a call, chat, text, whatever, and help you get to where you want to be. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. All right, so specifically, we're gonna be talking about the Denver metro area, and we're gonna use numbers kind of pulled from all over the place, and I'll give you a few different places. But first, let's start with real estate. So the median price for a single family home in Denver, Colorado is about $645,000, which for some people, they might be coming for New York City, Los Angeles, Seattle even, some of those bigger popular areas. $645,000 is like, oh, you know, whatever, easy. They just sell their $4 million, 2-bedroom house, and they come here, pick it right up. Not necessarily the case if you're living in the majority of other places, but there are a few things that actually make our homes a little bit cheaper than the actual price if you compare it dollars to dollars in other states. We'll get to that later, but there are a few other places throughout Denver that are a little bit cheaper when it comes to home prices. So if you're looking for somewhere maybe not as expensive or you're just trying to get out of the city just a little bit, there are a few other places you could check out. Aurora being one of them. Median price is $535,000, but Aurora is very big. So I mean, there are definitely different sections throughout Aurora that you can check out that have vastly different prices. A little bit northwest, Aurora is a little bit cheaper than the rest of Aurora. So, you could probably get mid to low 400s even through there. You also have Thornton, Colorado, which is just north of Denver, $579,000 median home price for a single family. And Westminster, which is northwest, kind of on your way to Boulder, $559,000 for a single family home. So there are plenty of options if maybe you don't have that high of a budget for $645,000, but there are options for almost everybody out here. Now these prices have gone up quite a bit, kind of like the majority of the United States has the last few years. And this is largely due to the fact that a lot of people have been moving here and we just don't have a whole lot of homes. So demand has been continuously high here. Right now we're sitting at about 2 months of inventory, which if you don't know, inventory is kind of how we measure how many homes are on the market. And that's just if no more homes came on the market, how long would it take for us to completely run out of homes at the rate that buyers are buying them? And for the longest time, throughout 2020, all the way through early 2022, kind of when things started shifting a little bit, even until like mid 2022, we were sitting at 0.3 to 0.5 months of inventory. So that was 2 to 3 weeks of inventory, which was almost nothing. Now 2 months is like, whoa, we have so much, but an average market is about 6 months. So we are still very low on inventory here, which just causes a lot of demand. And when interest rates did go up about a year and a half ago, that's when we saw inventory increase to about 2 months to where we're at right now. But it's kind of plateaued a little bit, and that's kind of where we're at. Home builders just aren't building homes just for fun anymore. They're only building homes to people that are buying it as they're buying them. So they're not gonna overbuild right now. And there's really no way to catch up on that unless a lot of people start leaving Denver. But the bright side of that is it's keeping our prices really steady. Yeah, I know a lot of places when interest went up. I know a lot of places throughout the United States that when interest rates went up, they lost a lot of the appreciation that they gained from 2020 all the way through 2022. Colorado, we definitely went down a little bit this past year, but not a whole lot. We've remained relatively stable, especially at the lower price points where a lot more people are still buying at. It's mostly the higher price points that are suffering a little bit. It's mostly the higher price points that saw that slight decrease in value. Now I couldn't really get into mortgage payments for those home prices because every mortgage is so different. It depends on how much you're putting down, your credit score, all that. So I really can't give you an estimation on your mortgage. You could probably go on Google, type in mortgage calculator, fill out all the details for that and kind of get an estimation for that. But home prices, that's kind of what they are right now. Now, if you're moving here and you're planning on renting, which I actually recommend most people do, just because Denver is so big and there's so many different areas that appeal to a lot of different people that there's really no way to get on Google Maps and figure out where you want to live. Because once you get here and get in person and experience it all for yourself, it's so different than what you might think it actually be. So I would get here, rent in the area that you think you want to live, and maybe you have a flexible lease, and if you find something awesome, break the lease, find a way for the sellers to pay for that lease break fee, and then move in. But I usually don't recommend people buying sight unseen, just not ever having been to the area before. Because the worst thing is buying a place and then realizing, oh wait, I hate it here, and then, you know, selling 6 months later, or living in a spot that you really don't like anymore. But anyways, for a single 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment in Denver, Colorado, it's about $19.79 a month, so just under $2,000, and that's for an individual unit. Now that's the median price, so I mean, you can range from $1,300 all the way up quite high. But if you're looking for something a little bit cheaper, you can definitely find things on the cheaper end. Now that's just for a single apartment. If you are looking to rent a room, you could probably do it for quite a bit cheaper if you don't mind roommates, or you know, you're looking for something just short term. You find something in a Facebook group, you know, you can find places for $700 to $1,000. Depending on your perspective, you can find a place for pretty cheap. Now, some people might be like, $700 for a room? Like, that's ridiculous. But a lot of people here would be like, oh man, that's crazy cheap. So, you know, take your time, do a little bit of research before coming here and see what you can find as far as rents, is like if you're trying to keep it on the cheaper side. Now, I got all this information from rentcafe.com. So if you are looking for, maybe you're watching this video 8 months in the future, this is 2024. So if you're, you know, watching this 2025 or whatever, maybe go to that website and kind of get an update. That way you have more accurate pricing. But that's kind of what it is today. Now, maybe you have like 4 kids, a dog, a cat, and you're not going to fit in a single 1-bedroom apartment and you need to rent a house. Median rent for a single family home, 3-bed, 2-bath, is just about $2,800 a month. So it's not too much more than just a single apartment within Denver. So, you know, if you have a bigger family and you can afford a little bit more, I think the extra space would definitely be worth it. Now, that data was pulled directly from the MLS, so that might not be everything included. There actually might be some cheaper options out there, but that's just what was listed and leased through the MLS, and just data that I have access to that I can verify is accurate. Most of these are 12-month leases. Some are a little bit shorter, some are a little bit more flexible. They all vary, but for the most part, it's about that price. Now, quick tip, if you are looking for something a little bit cheaper, try and see if you can find a landlord directly and work directly with them and not necessarily go through anybody specifically, just because usually, you know, it's one-on-one, you can get a little bit better deal and you can kind of form a relationship. I know there's a lot of people out there that really don't like landlords, but at the end of the day, a lot of them are just, you know, they just have a place and they're trying to rent it out. So they would much prefer somebody that takes care of their house and respects it. And in return, they usually have much cheaper rent than market rate. I know people that are 40–50% under market rate because they've been in the same place for 3 to 4 years, and their landlord's just like, hey, this guy takes care of the property, they never call me, they, you know, sometimes fix things on their own, so yeah, I'm gonna give them cheap rent because I want them to stay. So if you can kind of form that relationship, I highly recommend it because it can save you a lot of money, and then you don't have to deal with that love-hate relationship with a landlord, because I know a lot of people don't like landlords. Usually it's when, you know, it's one landlord or a property manager that's dealing with like 50 of them, and you know, they're not replying to requests. So if you become that person, there's only one of you, one of him, and you're only calling them once every 2 to 3 months for something, I guarantee you they're probably going to be more willing to fix those issues a lot faster. And you're gonna have a much more enjoyable time. You're probably gonna have a much more flexible lease, and it's probably gonna be a lot cheaper. So if you can find a direct landlord, highly recommend it. All right, the next thing we're gonna talk about is property taxes. So this is really only applicable if you are buying a home or planning on buying a home, but taxes here are the 3rd lowest in the United States. So for example, the median single family home in Denver for $645,000, the taxes are approximately $2,548 a year. Now, if you were buying a home in Maine, which I didn't even pick the most expensive, I picked kind of like the lower 15, I don't know exactly where it's at. It's not the most expensive property taxes in the United States, but it's kind of like down there in the bottom 10–20%. The equivalent home price to pay the same amount of taxes of a $645,000 home here would be $311,000 in Maine. So quite a bit different than some of the other places throughout the United States, and it's just one thing that makes it a little bit cheaper. That alone is like $300 a month alone on your mortgage. So even though, you know, the home price is quite a bit different, it's not all that more expensive because $300 of that is taxes that you're not paying. So it's nice to have low property taxes here, and just a good thing to know. And it's just something that a lot of people don't know until they, you know, get to, a little while back, I had a client from California, and I was like, hey man, you're buying into a metro district, taxes are gonna be like $7,000, which is really high here. And this is for maybe like a $500–600,000 home. Can't remember exactly, but he was like, oh, that's nothing. I was paying like $21,000 a year in California. So I guess it's all about perspective. He was happy to pay the $7,000, whereas a lot of people in Colorado who have lived here would be like, whoa, that's ridiculous. You know, I don't want to pay that much money in taxes. But he was just like, hey, give it to me, I'll take it. But it's just something to consider when you're, factoring buying a home and just some of your costs. Now, the next thing we will talk about is utilities. Most people use them. And according to Forbes.com, the average utilities for someone in Colorado is about $180 a month, and that's gas, electric, and water. And it is the 4th lowest in the United States. Now, this will greatly depend on you and the size of the place that you're heating, cooling, all that stuff. Now, this will greatly depend on quite a few things. One, you, how much stuff you use, size of your home, how efficient your home is. So a newer home is going to be quite a bit more efficient than an older home. It will retain heat more. It'll retain, your AC. It'll keep it kind of trapped a little bit longer, all that stuff. So if you're somebody who takes a lot of showers, you're taking 25, 30-minute showers twice a day, and you're watering your grass 30 minutes at a time, 3 times a day, as many days a week as you can, then your water bill is probably gonna be a little bit higher. If you have the AC running on full blast all summer, probably gonna run a little bit higher. So, but if, on average, it's about $180 a month, which is not bad. Another thing to remember is your costs are gonna fluctuate. So in the winter, your gas is gonna be a little bit higher just because, your furnace is gonna be running a little bit more. And in the summer, your electric and water is gonna be higher because you're gonna have the AC running, and you're probably gonna be watering your lawn. So in the summertime, probably gonna have a little bit higher there. Winter, higher there, but overall it pretty much evens out throughout the year. All right, the next thing is transportation. So here in Denver, we have the RTD system, which is done pretty well. We have monthly passes for $88, which actually just went down from $114. So it's gotten a little bit cheaper, which also includes to and from the airport. And we also have one-way tickets for $2.75. So if you're just, you're out for a trip or two, it's really not a whole lot to just pay for a quick ride. I know some people that will take it and just go to, a game downtown. That way they don't have to worry about traffic. They don't have to worry about parking. It's actually a little bit cheaper because usually you're paying, $25, $30 for parking for a game, and you're not sitting through traffic, you're not spending all the gas. So a lot of people take the train to get to some of those games, but at the end of the day, it's still pretty cheap. So if you're living here and you don't want to drive to and from work, you're working downtown or somewhere that is really accessible from, or you're working somewhere that is just easily accessible through our system, then maybe this might be for you. It could probably save you a lot of headaches, a lot of gas money, all that stuff. Now, if you have your own car and you're driving yourself, putting in gas, mid-grade here in Colorado is about $3.15 as of February 2024. I don't want anybody reaching out to me like, hey, you said it was $3.15 and it shot up to like $3.75. I don't know what it's gonna be, a month from now. Gas prices always go all over the place. But right now it's $3.50, which I think is pretty good. I definitely know it's probably better than California, but I don't know about some of the other states. Overall, I still think it's pretty cheap for gas. And one tip for being in Denver, and this is probably true for most major cities, don't go to the gas stations right off the exit off the main roads, because they're probably gonna be 10 to 15 cents at least more expensive. So over time, you'll definitely find some of the gas stations that are, a quarter mile down the road that are that are gonna save you a few bucks every single time you go to the pump. But it's usually more about principle. You usually just don't feel, you just like, man, why is this guy charging me just a little bit extra for gas? Because it's right there. It's kind of annoying. So over time, you'll find those places that are just a little bit expensive that you avoid, and it's not gonna be a big deal. But if you're new here, just avoid those places. But if you're new here, just try and avoid those ones that are just right off the main road. All right, another thing that a lot of people ask about is childcare. And this is largely gonna depend on where you're at. But for the most part, I would expect between $1,600 and $1,800 a month, and that's for like a full service childcare. That's not part-time. You can definitely find part-time for quite a bit cheaper. But again, this is something that will vary greatly depending on the location and quality of the childcare. Now, if someone's advertising on Craigslist that they're gonna watch your kid for a week for 50 bucks, probably wouldn't do that. I'm sure there are better alternatives. If you are leaning towards that option, give me a call. I'll help you find somewhere a little bit cheaper. I'll help you find somewhere that's still cheap, that's not $50 Craigslist childcare. Another thing to think about is, and this is just from personal experience, I have quite a few friends that have children in childcare. Sometimes there's wait lists and it can be a long wait. So if you are planning on moving here and you're like, oh, I'll just sign them up real quick when I get there, there might be a wait list for the places that you want to go or the places that are near where you're going to be living. So I would, call ahead, see if you can reserve a spot, see if there's openings, all that stuff, just so that, you don't get here and you're just like, oh, I didn't know that there was no openings. And you have a place for your kid that you trust, like, all that stuff. And the last thing I'll talk about is just going out to eat, because it's something we all do. I think it's a lot more common nowadays. I don't know if people just don't like going to the grocery store as much, but it just seems like people tend to go out and eat a little bit more. And I don't know how much this varies state to state, but I definitely know it can vary. Last summer, I was driving up to North Dakota and we stopped at a diner, and for like $7, I got a nice burger and a big basket of fries. And I was like, hold on, like, this is crazy. This is like a $25 meal in Denver. I thought it'd be a little bit closer in price, but I guess not. But here, if you're going out to just your typical fast food, I mean, you can get away for, you know, $5 to $7. But if you're trying to get like just a regular size meal for a single person, it's probably gonna run you about $10 to $15. Now, if you're going to a sit down restaurant that's not necessarily fancy, but not necessarily like the 1.5 stars on Yelp kind of restaurant, you're probably gonna be spending at least $30 for an entree. You know, you might spend a little bit more if you get a drink, and then if you add the tip there. So you're probably gonna be spending $35, $40 at most for one of those. If you're spending any more than that, you're probably going to a little bit nicer place, or you're getting a little too wild with dessert, or maybe just ordering a little bit too much food. I don't know. Now, also throughout Denver, there's plenty of nice restaurants for, you know, a couple people. You can get a decent steak dinner, nothing too fancy, but also not just your average Joe steak that they're probably gonna overcook a couple times. And that'll probably cost you around $100 or maybe up to 150. It really depends on if you're getting some drinks, maybe you upgraded the mashed potatoes to, you know, baked potato. I don't know, maybe you get a little wild with the appetizer, maybe you're a generous tipper, but usually $100 to $150 is pretty accurate for something that's pretty decent, and you know, you'll have a pretty nice time there. But for the most part, that takes care of a lot of the everyday costs that most people are gonna be running into. I'd say grocery items are pretty similar across. I didn't really want to get into the price of bread and eggs because I don't think anybody's thinking, oh man, eggs are an extra 75 cents in Denver. You know, your grocery bill is probably going to be a little bit more. It just kind of depends on how much you eat, but that's something that you can kind of gauge when you get here. And maybe you just don't get the party-sized Doritos this time around. It's probably better for you anyways, but you know, it is what it is. But hopefully, you know, I covered a lot of the things that most people are gonna run into, all the expensive items. You know, it seems like home prices, renting, childcare, a little bit up there compared to a lot of other states. So that might be a little shock when you get here, but some of the things that are expensive elsewhere, it's a little bit cheaper here, such as utilities and property taxes. Overall, I definitely say Denver is not necessarily cheap to live in, but you can definitely find some cheaper areas to live in, but it's just one of the side effects of living in such a great state. We have a lot of awesome perks that other states just can't offer. You know, you can't necessarily go ski and snowboard every other weekend in Kansas, but you can do that here in Colorado. You know, you can't go hike mountains all over the place in the majority of the United States. You can do that here. It's a trade-off, and it's something that a lot of people like to do, and they think it's worth it when moving here. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned a little bit. Maybe you have an idea of what you might need to spend or what you might expect to spend when you get out here. I know a lot of people come out here, they'll type in, you know, Facebook group like searching for a 4-bed, 2-bath house. My budget's like $1,400, and everyone just kind of like laughs at them, and it's just because they just don't know. But hopefully now you know, and you have some sort of idea. And if you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit that like button. We'd really appreciate it. Oh, and don't forget, if you are planning on moving out and you have some questions that maybe I didn't answer, or you just want a little bit of help getting out here, my contact information is below, so feel free to shoot me a text, call, email, whatever you prefer, and I'd be more than happy to help you in whatever way I can. But until then, I will see you guys next time.